Good afternoon. Welcome to Tech Up for Women's Tech Up Talks. We are so excited today to have 4 women on the topic of breaking barriers and creating innovative leaders, how to drive one's career through the difficulties and obstacles faced by women in the tech space. This is probably a topic we could speak about for quite a long time. We've got about 30 to 40 minutes here today. It'll be up as a recording down the line, and maybe we'll get these women to come back in 6 months from now and continue the topic. So today our program host is, is Sanyogita. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Sanyogita Shamsunder from, she's Vice President of 5G Labs and Innovation at Verizon. Previously, she was Director of Advanced Wireless and Mobile Technology Planning and has led the 5G network planning and device technologies teams at Verizon. Sanyogita has directed and managed teams in all areas of the wireless business and network technology development, marketing, planning, and strategy. She received her MBA from the Wharton School and a PhD in electrical engineering and math from the University of Virginia. And we have been honored to have her on our Tech Up for Women conference stage last year, and we look forward to having her next month as well on the topic of 5G. And again, we're honored to have her here today. I'm going to turn the program over to her, and she is going to introduce you to the other speakers. And thank you. Sanyogita, take it away.
Thank you, Dawn. Excited to be here and to discuss this important topic. As Dawn mentioned, it's a long topic. I won't repeat the title of the talk, but suffice it to say, I have a group of fantastic female leaders and engineers from the technology industry here to throw some light on, how they have navigated, what are they doing, how are they making the industry better, and share ideas and tips on how to navigate through the tech space. So without further ado, let me hand over to Arleny. Arleny, please introduce yourselves. Arleny is from Verizon.
Hi, everyone. My name is Arleny Valle. I am a principal member of the technical staff in Sanyogita's org. I work on the technology development team, and I'm super excited to be here today.
Sadie, again from Verizon.
Thank you, Sanyogita. I'm Sadie Garcia. I am a project manager within the XR Labs, and I am excited to be here today as well.
And then we have Rachel from the startup industry, a serial entrepreneur, has been a CEO of a couple of different companies. Rachel, please introduce yourselves too.
Thanks, Sanya. My name is Rachel Lyubovitzky. I'm the CEO of Everything Benefits. We are a benefits technology company oriented at making benefits easier for employees and employers, and very excited to be here today.
All right, so just to tee you up a little bit, Verizon has earned spots on the NAF top companies for executive women, the best companies for dads, working mother 100 best companies, as well as best companies for multicultural women, and so on. But there is more work to be done. We recently released the Diversity and Inclusion Report at Verizon. You can find it on the Verizon website. While we have significantly improved our board members, 50% of our board members are women, over 33% of our employees globally are female. However, the challenge we have is on the technology side, we have fewer females. We are taking many steps, several steps, in fact, and coincidentally today, there's also a documentary that on PBS that we sponsored that talks about the fact that we are not done in terms of women in workplace, and we have to work on solutions that create lasting changes to bringing more women and representation in the workplace. In addition, our business CEO just announced the Future Fund for female founders. So that's also something that has coincidentally happened today. So there is a lot of work going on across the company in terms of bringing diversity as well as inclusion into into the mainstream as far as our employee experiences go. So Arleny, can you just throw a little bit of light on how your journey has been as a technology leader and technology developer in the industry in general?
Yeah, thank you, Sanyogita. So my journey actually started in college. I won a scholarship from Verizon, and at that scholarship dinner, I brought my resume, and that turned into an internship. And that was a really great opportunity because my senior manager, Vidula, she was a very, very, strong, intelligent woman, and she gave me a lot of responsibility and really treated me like an engineer and set a great example of encouragement and really creating a tribe mentality and helping me through all those nuances of being new to the corporate world. And from there, I held a full-time position through the leadership development program. And I've come across so many great women who really are role models of how to handle, life and all the balances that come with it. People like Michelle White, Nikki Palmer, yourself, Sanyogita, you've been really inspirational. And like you said, Sanyogita, there's still a lot of work to be done as far as the ratio of women. But the women that we do have are really great. And we have an amazing culture that is very supportive. So really great journey so far.
Sadie, you have a slightly different perspective, having had founded a company and then coming to Verizon and have experience in various different areas of the ecosystem.
Yes.
What would you say? Your journey?
So what I would say is, a few years ago, I experienced a TBI, traumatic brain injury, and I considered, as doctors did too, myself out for the count. And at that point, I just wanted to have a job. So I went after being a CEO of my own company for many years, I had my traumatic brain injury and I just wanted to have a job. So I started doing EA work. And one day I got a call from a recruiter for Verizon, who called me several times and said, we want you to come on board in the XR Labs based on my network engineering background. And I was like, oh, I don't know, but I did it. I came into Verizon as an executive assistant with a traumatic brain injury, but working around so many talented people. When I tell you talented, I mean extremely talented people. It's kind of like a child when they, want to learn a bike, want to learn to ride a bike. If all their friends are riding bikes, it's a matter of time before they'll learn to ride the bike. And being around all the talented people within XR Labs and within Verizon itself, before I knew it, I was applying for a position as a project manager at the encouragement of my coworkers, and I got the position, and here I am. And the encouragement from all my coworkers just continues and continues. And if the doctors who told me that I would never work again saw me now, they'd be really surprised. But I am so thankful to be with Verizon. I didn't think I'd be here 5 years from now after traumatic brain injury, but here I am.
Well, that's a fantastic story, Sadie. Rachel, you bring a completely different viewpoint to this. Again, you have a tech background. You started off as a software engineer, and then you founded several companies. Just give us a little bit of, insight into your journey and how you see, this industry from your vantage viewpoint.
Absolutely. And quick word, Sadie, I'm so inspired by your story. What an amazing story to share. But with my journey, it's actually kind of an accidental, which I think is a good message to the folks out there. My co-founders and I got together to start working on the new company. They're both, two of them are more tech-minded than I am. I do have masters in computer science, but I haven't actually practiced the art much. I do enjoy building relationships, working with people, and so somebody had to do it. In my case, it had to be me. And so we got together and built a company, and I'm the CEO.
Great. So I think, all of us come from very diverse backgrounds, like even being women, all of us are different. And diversity brings a unique perspective to the situation and advantage as well. For myself, for example, I started off in being an engineer because I like math. That's why I make sure that I put math, a PhD in math, as one of the things that I write down, because really math was the reason why I became an engineer. And then once I got into engineering, I really enjoyed it a lot. Looking at the big picture, it was important for me to get the whole story. And although I started off with a PhD and taught for a little bit, but I really was, more interested in looking at like what is the big problem that we are trying to solve, and how do we put in and how do we make build solutions and build technology that can solve a certain problem. And that's where I made the switch to go into industry. And that background of deeply working on problems really gave me a distinct difference, I guess, sometimes an advantage, and sometimes it can be a curse actually, to go into a lot of detail trying to understand everything. So that's always something that you have to balance out. But I do bring a different perspective in the sense that I understand, try to understand from my viewpoint, what are the bounds of what we can do from a given technology perspective. So having said that, Sadie, what do you think? How do you see your role, and how do you see your background, and your diversity play in the day-to-day of your career?
So basically, I would say in the day-to-day of my career, having a tech background, of course, helps working in the technology department, but also having at one point being the own CEO of my own communications company kind of helps me with relationships and communicating and working with teams, because I work with several teams of mostly all engineers. So I would say that helps a lot, definitely. And as far as diversity, I would say having an understanding how everybody needs to feel included, I guess inclusion. So I would say that makes me definitely more sensitive to inclusion.
Yeah. So Arleny, where do you think you've seen your your unique way of working and collaborating with people, especially bring to light in certain situations that has helped you or hurt you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think my curiosity is definitely something very unique that I try to leverage as an advantage. And there's this running joke that men won't ask for directions when they get lost. So I'm definitely there asking for correct directions, trying to close that feedback loop and find out more about how we can improve and be agile and iterative and be better and bigger the next time around. So one of the things that I always do is look at it as if there were a Yelp review about you, what would it say? So it's better to find out and ask before that gets published. So talking to my peers, talking to my leadership, and talking to the customers as well, and finding out all the different ways that we can improve what your strengths are is something great. So being curious and being able to ask these questions is something that we can definitely bring to the table and own as far as our unique advantage.
Yeah, actually, I just want to, talk about a incident not too long ago where Arleny was thrown, and I think in one of her first jobs in the team, where it was a high pressure environment. Something was not working. We were going to show it to the entire world the next morning, and here it was like the whole thing was not working. And I remember speaking to her on the weekend in the middle of the night. Trying to help her debug this and trying to get her help. But I was amazed at how calm she was, right? The whole thing, she was not freaking out. She was not, going crazy about, okay, oh my God, this is not working or whatever. She contacted the people that we had, we said, let's get their help. She had already talked to a few already. And the whole thing, work turned out to be a great thing. But the most important thing in all of that was the fact that she was able to work through all of that through, very calmly. And anything more to add, Arleny, there?
Yeah. I mean, as Sadie said, we work with so many different teams, and it's just amazing, the collaboration and the teamwork. And one of the reasons why I was able to stay so cool and calm is because I know, Verizon has our back. We all are here to make sure that we're showing up and providing wins. So that definitely makes you feel a lot less pressure knowing that you have a team of 100K plus folks to support.
Yeah. Yep.
That's great. Rachel, you again have a different perspective. Very strappy. You've built your own. Any specific insights into how you handle the fact that we all bring different viewpoints? What would you say we should focus on while dealing with people of different backgrounds and sometimes difficult situations, tough situations? What are some of your go-to tips?
Well, we realized early on that people are what ultimately all of us are technologists here, but ultimately it's the people that drive those technologies, and it's the people that solve these different problems. And so respect and listening are the two of our company values. We all bring something different to the equation. And if you don't listen to the other side, you're not going to learn, you're not going to solve a problem. So this is very deeply ingrained in us. And in terms of acceptance, I think I wrote a little essay a couple of days ago. One of the things that COVID did, if you look at the positives, is that I think it did help with more of the mutual awareness, more of the mutual respect that I am right now inside, and all of our listeners are inside each other's living rooms, bedrooms. We are letting a little bit of our personal story be seen to the other people, and we all have so much in common. And so exposing that a little and being receptive allows us to engage better with each other.
Yes.
That is great. Sadie, anything you want to add there? I know you.
Yeah, just basically, I would add in there that just for, women in tech, just, making sure, and one thing I love about Verizon and one thing I appreciate about you, Sanyogita, is that you encourage us to have a voice. So make sure you always use your voice, and having a voice is a good thing, and it just helps. And that's one thing I think that we as women in tech all have in common, that we have a voice, and we have to all be confident in using our voice.
Yeah. So again, realizing that sometimes that there's no replacement to having those relationships, right? Because again, even within women, we are different, and unless we are able to communicate things that are important to us, or offensive to us, it's hard for somebody else to understand that. So I think being open about communication is really the best way. Having said that, what would you tell your younger self? I mean, you guys are young, so what would you tell your younger self in terms of dealing with challenging situations?
So for me, having previously, had my own communications company as a CEO, I experienced a lot of mansplaining. So the way I would deal with that in my younger years is I would be a bit passive. And what I would tell my younger self is, there is a way to assert yourself. You don't have to be passive to deal with situations. You can assert yourself. There's a time and a place. And the way I've learned to do that now is just kind of pull the person to the side and say, hey, X, Y, Z, and, can I do this better? Or can you help me with this? But not just necessarily be passive to it, but, it's a time and place, pull them aside one-on-one and assert what I thought, and be willing, as I believe Rachel had said earlier, to listen to what they have to say, but not necessarily being passive.
Okay. Rachel, anything?
I propose maybe a little bit even more global approach. I think we live in a technology-enabled society, and it's lucky for me that I had chosen to have my earlier education in technology. There isn't enough of that done, or the path is not taken by enough girls. Understanding technology helps us understand the world around us. All of it is driven by the tech. And so if you understand it better, you're going to be in a better position to navigate around it comfortably. You don't need others to show you around. Sadie said, you'll know your own way faster. So I wish I did better at math when I was younger. I definitely should have tried a little harder. But technology and STEM backgrounds, I think, ultimately will make a lot of successful professional women in tech in the future.
Yeah, that's a great point. And organizations like Tech Up for Women that try to bring in tech for for all different women, all in all walks of life, I think are one tool. Any other tools or websites or meetups that you recommend for the membership and for people who are viewing? Like, for example, I end up following a lot of articles on Coursera, for example. Once in a while, go read white papers that some of the companies publish. Some ways to kind of keep up. There are podcasts which are, you know, make some of the technology jargon a little simpler. That you can start off with to understand some areas. Anything else that you can recommend, Rachel, in terms of networking, or even getting a understanding of some of the technology terms and so on, and that are prevalent in the industry?
Some of the other areas, one really excellent resource specifically for New Jersey is New Jersey Tech United, which is a merger of Propelify and New Jersey Tech Council. So that's a great resource to really dive into everything technical taking place in New Jersey. And there are many resources like that in different states. A lot of the larger organizations have women groups that are specifically oriented around technology. And so they're very open, so you can join many different ones depending on where you are. Meetups as well. There are many technology-oriented meetups that are very helpful. And I was particularly impressed, but I never had the guts to explore. And I'm not Girls Who Code or Women Who Code. There are groups like that are really, really exciting for the folks to check out.
I hadn't heard about women who code, but I know Girls Who Code because I started one of those chapters. Arleny, can you also chime in on what would you tell your younger self, like somebody in school now? What advice would you give?
Yeah, I'd say one thing that always comes to mind is being effective versus being right. There's a lot of times when we communicate as engineers, we have to take the information that we're looking at and be able to communicate that out. So when you are communicating that out, never saying I told you so, never, always trying to be very encouraging and looking at the bright side, and being empathetic is something that is super important. And it goes a long way, because when you're focused on just being right, that creates a lot of ego, and that's very, it strays you away from what we're here to do as engineers. So being effective, being encouraging and collaborative, and knowing that it's all right to ask for help is really, really useful and key. And I wish I would have told myself that when I was still in college.
That's a great perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think just as a tidbit, Arleny volunteers her time in being a leader for our interns who come in. She advises them. She's a mentor for our new engineers as well, who we hire. So giving it forward is also an important part of I think growing up, understanding some of the challenges that you have, and giving your input in terms of how to deal with these scenarios. The other topic I wanted to make sure, actually, Allison says eSchool for Girls is another great resource. So thank you for that. In terms of COVID, Rachel mentioned, there's been positives, although a lot of negatives of this time. There's been some positives as well, where a lot of us have been able to connect maybe more, or personally, one-on-one connections have been strengthened in some ways, weakened in some ways, but also strengthened in some ways. But there's also been challenges, especially for women in the workforce, especially those who are caregivers, either or for the very young, or for or for parents, in terms of navigating this. And while at Verizon we have a lot of resources that have been offered, like for initially we had of our benefits extended to cover family that comes into to care for your little children. And of course we see little kids come in all the time on video conferences and so on. That's great. But unfortunately not all companies have the resources that we have, and I know some of the smaller companies are struggling to offer the same benefits. And actually that's kind of one of the topics of the documentary that I mentioned, right? We had great momentum going into 2020 with women entering the workforce, support of women, but then something like this struck, and we have made we have regressed in some ways. Women are dropping out of the workforce faster than ever before, and we need to make sure we have lasting solutions. And while it's not a silver bullet in terms of something that one can do, it takes a village, as they say, family support as well as employer support, and so on. Rachel, can you just give us some thoughts on how you see it? I know you and I discussed this a little bit. I would love to get your input.
Sure, thank you. I mean, conceptually, women end up being the primary caretakers of children as well as aging parents. So it's inevitable, statistically speaking, more women end up taking on that responsibility as well as their professional lives. And as Sanyogita said, it will and is already resulting in many women unable to handle both of those burdens, and unless there is a support from their employers, unfortunately dropping out of the workforce to support their families. I think fundamentally, businesses really should be mindful of the fact, in addition to everything else, women are the major force behind consumer shopping. If they're stuck at home on reduced budgets and don't really have, our economy is not going to recover. So all of us have to do everything possible to send those women that want to be a part of the workforce back to work and give them the means necessary to stay there in order to help our economy recover. We are the necessary component of it, and we need a lot of support for that to happen.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. There's a question from the audience. One of the questions, I'll just throw it out there. I know we are short on time. What is the biggest challenge you see for women in STEM? Arleny?
Yeah, that's actually something that comes to mind when I think of this role that I took on now, being imposter syndrome. So that's something that, every technology role I've held, I always feel a little weary going into it, like, oh man, do I belong here? And I feel like sometimes men, they'll look at a job requisition and they'll be like, well, I don't have 3 out of the 5 things, but I have the 2, so I can do it. And they have so much more courage and empowerment with that. So that's something that I feel women might struggle with in tech roles, is just feeling like they belong there and they're supposed to be there, and finding that voice like Sadie was mentioning. And so being in an org like your Sanyogita, where we have that voice and we found it, can be super, super motivational for evening those scales and making things easier for women in STEM.
Oh, thank you. I'm humbled by that. I mean, truly, I think we all as leaders and those of us who have had experience, I think it behooves us to make sure that we have an inclusive, even in a meeting, right, where women tend to be quieter. And while if it's an in-person meeting, you somehow can include by looking at body language, feeling the body language that this person wants to say something. It's that much harder in a video conference, right? When you're on a video call, you don't know who's wanting to say something and hesitating to speak up. So one of the things that I try to do is to keep looking for, make sure your video is on, right? And keep looking for somebody who's trying to unmute themselves perhaps and not confident, and make sure that you ask everyone to speak up, and also make people inclusive. I know we tend to, again, awareness is key. We tend to kind of go back to our stuff that we are most comfortable with. For example, there are many men, if there are many men in the group, it immediately goes to sports analogies, right? I think there is, again, it's assumed that everybody's into sports. I'm not into sports. So it's easy for me to say, well, let's use some other analogy. Right? But I think that applies to even men too. I mean, not everybody is in sports, so I think we all have to generally be more aware, and differences, especially today in the global world, where all of us have very different backgrounds that we come from. So that's important. Let me see. A question from an attendee. If you want to pivot your career into a tech role, do you need a mentor in the area you want to pivot to, or what education do you suggest? Sadie, you have firsthand experience in this. Why don't you take that?
Okay, so what I would suggest is maybe starting out with a certification course just to kind of ease your way into the tech world. And then also, yes, I would suggest a mentor, as it has worked for me. It's helped me out a lot. Ben Heckle's been my mentor, transitioning from an executive assistant position back into tech, as a project manager, working with all engineers, and having an engineering background myself. So yeah, being out of tech for 20 something years, you feel like you never were in it. So starting maybe with just a certification course or something like that. And then as you get in, go into something a little bit more heavier. Thank you.
Rachel, how do you foster talent, like in your company, in a startup? I know I have been at startups. It's the advantage is that you can do a lot of different things. You just have to have the desire to do it, and you're not pigeonholed like sometimes in a very, very big company you are. Can you give us a little bit of insight into how you operate, or how you've seen startups operate that can help women?
Maybe to piggyback on Sadie's comment, what's actually kind of cool is we have some folks who are several team members who are women, who have non-technical degrees, who have embarked on the technical degrees as a additional degrees. And so it's exciting, it's tremendously exciting to have them on the team and really feel and sense how they are broadening, how they are understanding the world, how they're operating. And it's also wonderful that they can turn to some of the technologists on our team to really dive into these questions. Hey, can you help me with the homework? I'm not understanding that subject. It's really cool to be able to do that. And it builds, companionship on the team, and it helps everybody around.
Yes.
Thank you. That was awesome. I'm gonna round off with one last question, maybe a quick roundtable, a 2-minute answer on what are some great ways to connect with other women that you've found? Whoever wants to go first.
I'll go for it. So one of the great ways that I've been able to connect with women is just really leveraging your network. So when you meet someone, reach out to them on LinkedIn, save their email, save their number, because your network will start to grow. And from the time where you're in, as a student to when you're actually in a full-time higher position, regardless of where it is, keep growing your network and growing those connections and stay in touch, because you never know, when your paths will cross again.
Okay.
One of the great groups that Verizon offers is, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's the ERG group. So one of the ways you can connect within Verizon with other women is kind of joining one of the ERG groups for women in tech, or, that's a great way.
Yeah. Rachel?
So there are many different ways. One is I really enjoy connecting with other women at work. It's always, you always learn something new. The other dimension is, for example, we have our client advisory board that consists of some of our clients and partners, and it's comprised of a number of women. So it's always amazing to hear their perspectives, their thoughts, how they operate. So that's one of the other areas that depending on where you are, what role you're in, clients that are women could be a source to engage with professionally as well as personally.
That's fantastic. That brings us to the end of the wonderful session. I really enjoyed, having this discussion. I do think that, many of us have been in this industry, have perspectives, and have learned a few lessons over time. And it's great that you were able to share some of those insights and background with some of our colleagues. So thank you so much for taking this time and coming on the panel. We will end now, and this session will be available. Like I said, Dawn said the recording will be available for the future. So feel free to email questions to Tech Up Talks, and we can try to answer back channel. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you all. Enjoyed having you.